Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
It's happening again.
What is?
This has been happening the last few years, Alex, but it's been happening with Glorious. And now it's happening with you.
What?
They say that the longer a couple is together, the more they dress similarly. Hi, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Chris Ryan. This is Alex Simmons. We're an old married couple, apparently. And we're here to tell a damn story to make your lives, your writing lives, a little easiar. By the way, first rule of writing, especially if you're writing with a partner, you don't have to dress just like them.
No.
It could be a happy accident like it is with us today.
Wow, I had not seen that, but yeah, you're right. Yeah,
It's
there we
hilarious. It's hilarious.
There we are. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, here we are, folks. We're here for you. That's why we're
right.
here. That is why we're here, right? Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yes. And what topic are we going to discuss for these fine people who are emerging as their own writer selves?
Well, for our peeps today, we're going to be talking about answering actually a question that's come to us. What is the value of writing short stories, and what are some of the best techniques? And we decided to even stack that a little bit. So you're not only going to get what are the values of writing short stories and what are the best techniques, but what also makes a good story hook. So stay around because we're going to just be dropping. What are we dropping? We're dropping bombs. That's what we're going to be
dropping. Knowledge bombs, bro.
Yes,
I think for that second question, Alex's answer is going to be very different from mine. And if you want any proof, just read the different blackjack stories that he's written and I've written, because we hook them very differently.
Yes.
All right. Do. So let's begin, shall we?
Yeah. So what is, as far as you see, Mr. Ryan, what are the benefits of writing short stories? I mean, a lot of people that I know, a lot of students and clients that I've dealt with want to go right to, I got a novel. I'm ready to write my first novel.
If that's who you are, great. But I'm going to put it this way. I would say, I think it was a Revolutionary War politician like Thomas Jefferson or something like that. And please, I invite your cards and letters about who it actually was and why I'm wrong and a dolt. But the saying that I'm trying to get at was, I apologize for writing you a long letter, but I didn't have time to write a short one.
There you go.
And that kind of gets to the meat of why short stories are so great, because if you can offer a complete idea in, say, 12 pages, 16 pages, 20 pages, 50 pages, as opposed to 300-400 pages, whatever, your ideal novel length is, you demonstrate ownership and mastery of delivering an idea, which is, one of the artistic reasons. There's very many business reasons too, but let's start with artistic. One of the artistic reasons is because short stories are really great practice and exercise for creating longer works that are consistently interesting, because you have to see what's going to work in a short amount of time. We're not in Charles Dickens' day anymore, where, the written word was one of the only source of entertainment. So people wanted everything detailed. And Dickens was great at that. I have been guilty of calling him a word whore, but hey, my wife disagrees. I would only point to A Christmas Carol, which what I understand is he got a flat fee for that. And look how much shorter it is than anything else. When he was paying himself as the editor of the magazine to write short stories and paying him by the word, there was a lot more detail. But what am I to say? He's a classic of somebody's mind. But you can write really long novels that should be 100 pages.
And people have.
Really, yeah. And there's that great Stephen King story. Is like when he sobered up, he demanded an editor that would tell him no. Because when he wasn't sober, he wrote insomnia. He said, there's about 900 pages in there, and there should have been 400 or 500 pages cut, and left to my own devices. And I was in a lot of vices at that time. I indulged myself, and you can never indulge yourself. So short stories are good practice, and Stephen King still writes short stories because it keeps you honest. You only have a certain amount of time to get your idea across. So you don't have time to walk through the whole graveyard. You only got time for 2 or 3 headstones, and that has to give the feeling of the entire
Hmm.
thing. You have to set the mood in 1 or 2 sentences as opposed to 30 or 40 pages, which unless you're some kind of intoxicating poet of a writer, will kill your story.
I
So
would
that's one.
I would also
A second artistic thing is you have to get out there, right? And you can write his name, Joe R. Lansdale. He worked when he was first starting. He challenged himself to write a story a day. And he would work hours and hours on that story, and he would return to rewrite and polish it. But because he wanted to send a bunch of stuff out and find out what was working for his writing style and what wasn't. And, it's that idea of 10,000 hours to master something. He was going to work and master things. Who is it? Hunter S. Thompson, the Gonzo journalist. He used to type out Hemingway novels. He would just have the Hemingway novel next to him, and he would type it out to feel what it was like for those words to form from the typewriter in those days onwards. And by looking at those words so much, he would have to think about why those words work together. And speaking of Hemingway wrote his stories longhand on a standing desk where he would stand and write. And one of his friends came in and said, Ernie, don't you sit down when you write? Ernie got all insulted. What are you doing? Are you going to take a chair and sit down in a boxing ring? I'm fighting for my life here. So writing those short stories and pushing yourself to express yourself in as few pages or few paragraphs as possible is a great exercise. I find poetry to be a great exercise for prose because you have even less and the word choice is even more critical. So boom, that's why. You want to be a great writer? Write a lot. And write in things that you can send out often and get rejected. And if you're really lucky, you get rejected with a little note from the editor. That was good, but it dragged in the middle. I got a rejection recently. Said we really liked the idea, but the second half of the story was really harrowing, and some of the characters were still wisecracking. So we think you need to work on that kind of stuff. Meeting the moment. The dialogue has to meet the moment. Great lesson for free. You know, and I ran back to rewrite that story. I got rejected from a good friend that I've done a lot of work for, and I allowed myself to be pissed for a couple of hours, and then I said, okay, what could I have done differently with the story? And that anthology is going to be coming out soon, and I'm going to read that anthology, compare it with what I did. But I have rethought that story, and I know the twist that could have worked to bring it home, and it fits the needs of the Soul Scream anthology that is in production now. So I will have to carve out some time to rewrite that story to fit that. There's another thing. You're writing a story, it gets rejected. Look around, see who else has open calls. And oh well, I'd have to change a little bit of that story. They want horror tales in the rain for their anthology. Can I make that authentically work for this story? Whether you can or you can't, going through that thought process is invaluable. You know, I'm doing a project. Me and you are doing a project now, and we talked about Teal and to see if he had anything for it. And the thing he says, well, I'm going to see if I have anything that fits perfectly, or anything that can be retooled, or then I'm going to write something new if those first two things don't happen. And that's a process. That's a really
Hmm.
legitimate process. It's the other thing you do is you create a backlog of stuff that may have gotten rejected initially, but there's an open call 3 months down the line. You're like, whoa, this is perfect, and it's already ready. All of it is good, all good. So that's artistically why you would, the value of a short story. Business wise, the more short stories you get published, the more people know you. Because if you get one, you might get some people to read it. And if you get 8, you're going to have more people to read it. And if you got 10 or 20 or 30, somebody's going to say, let's get this guy a collection, or let's meet with this woman. She's got such interesting stories. What else does she have that we can publish? Remember, publishing houses are into making money, right? So if they see that you're being published and enough for it to register to them, they're interested in you because other people are interested. So business-wise, it makes a lot of sense too. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, folks. We'll be back after a word from our sponsor. I would just add to that a couple of quick things. One, a lot of people who first time novelists, right? First time writing, their major first story, feel that they've got to set everything up at the very beginning before they can get into the meat of the story. So if they're thinking, well, I'm writing a novel, I've got time. And the opening, that first chapter, that first, story arc, that first act of the story is verbose. It's a lot of this and a lot of detail, a lot of exposition, because they think I've got to build everything first before I can get to the story. And when you have that much space, when you're thinking I have a book, I have 85,000 words to work with, the openings drag. And the drag is one of the things that kills the sale. Because
Yeah,
literally, the moment a person starts reading, okay, man, nothing's happening yet, nothing's happening yet, okay, forget it. And a lot
yeah,
of people still, even with the fact that a lot of things can be on Kindle or some other form of ebooks or some other digital format, a lot of people will read the first paragraph or the first page or so to get a feel. And if it doesn't hook them, they're gone.
yeah. And
So,
there's a million ways to do that. You want to talk about some of that?
not yet. I just want to hit through these little quick things because you covered a lot already. So again, it's the it's the first trap is feeling like I got all the time in the world and all the space in the world, so I'm just going to expand. And no, that's slitting your wrist. Secondly, word knowledge. As Chris was saying, the more you write, you're building muscles. You're building technique. You're building the practices and habits of it. But the other thing you're doing is if I've written 15 different stories, I'm going to start to notice if I keep using the same phrase multiple times, even though I'm doing different stories. That phrase keeps coming up. That kind of speech pattern keeps coming up. And you're starting to recognize, oh, wait a minute, I got to get into my characters more so that their speech patterns match the character, or I got to watch this kind of phrasing because I'm using it too much. I got to find something different. So you begin to feel the need organically to expand your word knowledge, your usage of description, of characterization. And you get there because you've been able to look at a body of work and spot the repetition, spot the problems. So you can say to yourself without even somebody telling you, "Oh, wait a minute, I got to work on this." So that's two. And then three, we all go through it in different degrees, but especially again if we're starting out, we're aspiring, we're emerging, it's our first big project, our first major writing experience, and I wrote this passage or I wrote this dialogue and it's brilliant, it's wonderful, I love the sound of it, and it doesn't really fit.
Yeah.
But you're so in love with your words that you won't let it go. You won't even think about paring it down or moving it somewhere or even removing it to serve the story. So, once again, the more writing you do, the more stories you do, the more you work with different characters, the more you're going to fine tune your ear and your eyes and your thinking process to what helps a story, what makes a story work. And the more
Can I,
feedback you'll be getting too from different people that will
can I
allow them
suggest
to
a
help you.
can I suggest a way to make that a little less painful? If you're finding that a scene you love, one of your babies, doesn't work for that story, open up a second file, call it the save file, the really special stuff file. I always call it extras, and cut the whole scene, whatever you think is not working, and put it in there and hit save. Matter of fact, save it to a thumb drive if you want to, whatever you want. And then and
Hmm.
here's the trick. If it really didn't fit that story, you'll never go back for it. And you'll find somewhere else to use it. You might even start a whole new story because of that scene, right? But if you do need it, it's going to stick out. Oh, it really, and you'll prove to yourself you need it and why, how, and all that. And then you can go and get it back. It's really a safe thing to do. Hone your instincts and keep going. It's so important to keep going, right, Alex?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's absolutely. Okay. So those are some of the things that we can look at in terms of why doing short stories are valuable. There's not all the things we can look at, but those are some of them. Let's talk a bit about how to. I think that was our next, the
The
second phrase.
hook, baby.
Yeah. Actually, it was, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the question again. I'm going back for the question because I want to make sure that I got it. I covered what we promised. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we talked about the value of it. And yes, you're right, Chris. And we already talked about some of the best techniques for approaching it. All right. So, yes, now the hook. All right. So
You
there
and
was
I have
Peter
very different
Pan.
hooks, bro.
There was Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. All right. Why don't you start with your hook, sir?
I like to start to be really punny. I like to start with a right hook. Just pow, some kind
Yeah.
of action. Come into the scene in a car chase or an explosion or something funky, in a horror story or whatever. Um, I did a story of one of the revenants, a skeleton of a man named McTavish, who comes around and he rebalances the fairness. He gets justice for a community or for someone who's not going to get. And there was a scene, a guy who we were going to find out, spoiler, was guilty of something. So he's out in a rowboat, and it opens with him hearing splashes and looking over, and there's someone walking across the water towards him. So almost immediately you're like, "What?" And the those of the Jesus persuasion will say, "Oh my God, it's the savior." It is not the savior.
No, it's another visitor.
Mm-mm.
Yes.
Unless he'd been on a really bad diet.
Yeah.
Um, so it brings intrigue right away. So if it's not an actual punch across the face, which would be a great way to start a story.
And has
um,
been used. Yes.
yes, but yeah, the trick with that is you immediately, if you do something like that, you have about 50 words to set up a little glimpse of the situation so people have some footing as to what's happening, you know?
Absolutely.
And then once things are going and there's a real forward motion, then I try to work in any of the backstory that's necessary. You, sir, are masterful in easing in a little more. You do things that grab people. I think I use a big swinging hook like Jack Kirby. And I think you use a series of tiny hooks that just grab as there's no place for them to go because they're all hooked up by the time the first and second page is done. So let's talk about what you like to do.
I'm an intrigue person. Now, again, I will preface this by saying that I do believe very strongly that in short stories in particular, meaning you don't have a lot of space and time to get the people engaged in the story, to get the characters defined sufficiently that I give a damn about them one way or the other. So I do believe that you got to drop your audience into a crucial moment or somehow introduce that story as a crucial moment is key. How we do that differs, and
Right.
and I'm not opposed to what Chris does at all. But I find that more often than not, I'm an intrigue kind of guy. I want to I want you to have taken a sip or two of the bourbon before you realize it's poisoned.
Right.
That's it. It's like you've swallowed and gone, oh, damn it. You're right. And Chris will have slammed you against the wall and is about to force it down your throat, which again is cool. It's very cool. And I don't
Uh,
think. Yeah, I'm just gonna say I don't think either one needs to, oversee the other or push the other out of the way. I think it depends also on the writer's organic or authentic feel about how that first scene should open.
Right. For your film students, right? You have a few film students who will check this out. Mine would open on a close up of the shot glass and then follow it up to the guy's mouth. Yours would open up on a tracking shot. They might start on the street, go through the door, go down the bar, so you see all the different characters you're going to eventually use, and then you would end up with the shot going up to the person's mouth, and then whatever happens next in both our
Hmm.
stories would happen. But both are legitimate. You see this, it's just a matter of style and it's just a matter of editorial eye. But you can, your film students will be able to visualize both those openings
Yeah.
very easily, right? And some of them are going to say, well, I prefer this one. Some are going to be saying, I prefer that. And that's why we have auteurs and writers and filmmakers with an S at the end, right?
Yeah.
Because we want all sorts of stories told by all sorts of different people, you
Right.
know? And
And
there's
I
got to
think
be one student who says, "Yeah, I would start on the bartender and her making faces or whatever." Right? So it's still many other ways to do that opening, right?
can you think of a classic opening or a classic story that has an opening that you could use as a demonstration?
Yes. The opening for the first Indiana Jones movie.
Okay.
That's it starts with him, he's looking for something and he's going through the jungle and there's intrigue, there's suspense, then there's betrayal and murder, and then there's more intrigue and maybe possible supernatural things, and then he gets in over his head and there's danger and there's actions, and then there's everyone who actually lives there being chasing him down. Start the plane, a little bit of comedy, and then boom, all of that starts uh um there's kind of a Spielberg beautiful lush scene, and then he walks into it and it becomes suspenseful. Everything adds to the suspense, adds to the danger, adds to the action. Everything that we're going to need has been introduced. Somehow he uses the whip, sometimes he uses the hat, all that stuff is going. Boom. Compare that to, say, Lawrence of Arabia. Now I haven't seen that in 40 years, right? But what I remember is the opening shot of the vista, right? It was so, or maybe it's not the opening, it is the one that's stuck in my mind, but it was such a beautifully shot. And then we get into the Sound of Music, right? It starts on her and she's singing, and it's, what was it, the Himalayas? Is that where they were? That was just
It's the Swiss
beautiful.
Alps. The Swiss Alps.
The Alps, right?
Yes, right.
And she's singing in all this, and it's like, oh, what a great amphitheater, because her voice carries so well and all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. And her joy at music builds in with the theme of and the plot. The vista informs where we are. Her outfit informs who she is. All of it tells the story. The visual, the audio. You can almost smell that scene. Just like you can almost smell the Indiana Jones scene, except that smells like skulls. Any of those things. The great opening of the movie The Shadow,
Oh
which,
yeah.
like, the first 10 or 20 minutes were excellent and are worth seeing. The rest of the movie, maybe not so much, sadly, but there's a guy, he's got the stereotypical cement block around his
Yeah.
ankles. This guy's going to go in the drink. The gangsters are moving on, and then there's they're on a bridge. The cars are definitely from the 30s. The suits are from the 30s. They talk, it's, now you're gonna get it, and all that sort of stuff. And then there's, seemingly from everywhere, this menacing, evil laugh. And the shadow appears, and he's here, he's there, and then the big guns, the big not only does he shoot at the bad guys, but eventually he shoots the cement off around this guy's feet,
Yeah,
and
which
then
I
says,
always
"You owe
wondered
me your
about the
life."
ricocheting bullets
That's
myself.
right.
Yeah,
And, and but he doesn't, because he's the shadow, and he nothing
yeah,
ever goes wrong with the shadow. Big sweeping, what a great outfit, right? With all the black sweeping robes,
yeah.
and the red and the big hat and the shadowy eyes glistening. And he shoots to freeze the guy, and then says, "Your life is mine." You know, he gives him a
Yeah,
ring. That
you
means
owe
that
me
I
now,
can
boy.
I can contact you at any time, and you will do my bidding. The hell kind of freedom is this? What kind of rescue is this, right? And you are fully introduced to a hero that may not be heroic, right? So all these different things in those few openings, you can open a story a million different ways, but you hit all the things you're supposed to hit. You establish place, time, tone, character, setting, right? You establish tension. You give a hint of the subplots, the themes, the where the story's going to go, where the visual cues will be, all at once. And if you think of Indiana Jones, Sound of Music, The Shadow, very different movies, very different qualities, just very different genres. They all do those jobs.
Okay, I'm gonna do my three quickly. So
Cool,
the
sir.
first one is Belfast.
Ah,
All right, which Kenneth Branagh wrote the screenplay and directed it, and even the opening credits, which are sweeping shots of Belfast modern times, are a part of setting up that first scene. It's giving you a sense of the space of the town or the city rather, and in its present day glory, beauty, structure, all of that wonderful stuff, and then the camera sweeps in to a wall with a mural painted on it. And then we're looking at this brick wall with this mural of looks like workers, maybe factory workers, that sort of thing. And it's an old mural. And then we go from color to black and white, and we rise up over the top of the wall and into the community, the neighborhood that this wall is a shield for, and we're suddenly back in the past, and we get to watch the people going about their everyday business, being tightly formed community, but knowing everybody knows each other. And we move along the cobblestone streets to a group of children playing, and it's maybe sometime like in the afternoon. Obviously, maybe they're on a play break from school, and someone says, "Oh, it's your mom wants you home for tea." And so this little kid, this little boy who's been playing at some sort of knight, he's got a trash can lid for a shield and a wooden stick for a sword, and he's in his own world, and he's just having a great time. Again, it's all in black and white now, and he goes through the streets on his way home to have his tea, and his neighbors saying hello to you, and he says hello to them, and they're just basic everyday kind of banter until he reaches his block, and he's only a few feet from his house when just ahead of him, past his house, around the corner comes this crowd, and they're screaming and they're yelling, and they start throwing Molotov cocktails, and the little boy is frightened and paralyzed there in the street as they begin attacking the community and screaming and yelling, get the Protestants out of here. And that's the setup. So we've gone from, oh, this is beautiful, this is colorful, this is great, this is wonderful, into we're going into the past to see what this was like only a few years before. Second film, very quickly, Coda opens up again. The credits. We are maybe on the beach or a shoreline, looking out at this huge vista of the sea, the ocean, and tiny off to the left is this tiny little ship. And we then begin sailing across the waters to the ship. And the sound that we're hearing as we're traveling is this beautiful young girl singing to herself. And it's a spiritual piece, it's a gospel kind of feel. And when we finally reach the boat, we realize it's a fishing boat. And there are four people there working the boat, two older people, oh, mom and dad, younger man, okay, maybe he's like 19 or 20, and that's the son. And then this young girl who's singing. And they're all white, but she's singing this this song that sounds like it's a spiritual or gospel tune, and she is into it, and her voice is wonderful and everything. We're going, this is kind of cool. And then the next thing we know, we're cut. They've pulled into the docks and they're unloading their fish, and she's talking to the salespeople there and are cutting a deal for us. And we begin to realize when she goes to communicate with her family that she's using sign language.
Is they deaf?
And so we're getting immediately, wow, one with nature and everything, but all three of her parents and her older brother are deaf, and she can hear and speak, and there's a connection. She can talk to either one, and she's their connection too. Oh, wow. And she gets on her bike and heads off to school. But we've already gotten a sense of what her world is like before we actually begin to get into the portion of the story where we start to see where the conflicts are actually going to come from. And then the
Right.
last one, I'm going to jump in my time machine. I'm going to go MacGyver.
Shocking.
Yes, I'm going to go MacGyver. So we're going back to the 1980s TV series. And MacGyver's show had two things that I liked about it. I mean, aside from the character and some of the cool things that he did, was the first season in particular would always open with a MacGuffin. He's already finishing some sort of an assignment. And so you get to watch him succeeding at some sort of assignment, and he's narrating it. So you get this voiceover. So you're watching him and you're getting his voiceover, and his voiceover and narration is like he's telling a story. He's not like, oh man, no. It's it's funny how some days when you get up and you never realize that 20 hours later you're gonna have to rescue a general from three spies and an alligator or whatever.
And a
You know,
donkey.
yeah, very, very natural as you watch him go through these things, face these dangers, succeed and get away, and then into the credits. Every one of these things gets us going, oh man, really, what if this is happening, what's happening next, what's coming next, how's this little boy going to survive this Molotov cocktails and wait, and why are these people pissed off, and particularly if you're sitting there as a person of color, wait a minute, they're all white, there's not a racial thing here, what the hell is going on if you know nothing about the Irish conflicts, right? So you're even more curious there with Coda. Okay, she's got a deaf family she lives with, but she's got a pretty good life. What the heck could be the problem? And then we start to realize as the story unfolds, she's about to have to make one of her first major decisions that could impact on her entire family and her own life and challenge her beliefs about herself and her own value. So all of these things segue in, and MacGyver is just cool and it's fun. And how's he going to do whatever he is going to do, and how's he going to figure it out? All of these are hooks, and they're different ways, just like Chris was telling you, they're different ways of getting you to want to sit there for the next hour or the next 2 hours, with your popcorn and your drink or whatever, and find out what happens next. How do our protagonists get through whatever the conflict is, and what's going to be at the other end?
I mean, you can think of the say Sherlock Holmes or a Law and Order who done it versus a Columbo where you saw who done it and it
Yep,
was how's he going to solve it?
yep,
It's the same story.
yep.
It really is. It's just what the audience gets to know. It's all those little nuances that continue to keep stories fresh.
And that's the whole thing. So for you folks, you've gone through our library of possibilities, and believe me, we could sit here and pull
Tip
more.
of the
Yeah,
tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg.
yeah, really. But what you want to ask yourself is, what kind of story do I want to tell? What kind of characters do I want to spend time with and sort of bring into the world? And really, what's the story about?
Yeah,
Because once you have some idea of those three things, you can start to go, well, how do I want to start it?
yeah.
And if it's a short story, which we are absolutely pro, you don't, not everybody who's, especially, for you guys who are emerging or aspiring, please don't think that in order to be considered a writer, you have to write a novel or you have to write a feature-length screenplay. Short stories are valid. Just
Yeah,
like you could write, what do they call it, long form poems, or you can write haiku.
yeah,
There's still poetry.
yep,
You can do a 3 minute dance, or you can choreograph a ballet. It's still dance.
yeah. And how do you
So
get good at it?
yeah,
If you're going to be a writer, read a lot. If you're going to be a filmmaker, watch a lot. Watch classics, sure, but watch crappy ones too. And
Yep.
then ask or read crappy ones or read. How would I do that different? How could you tell that story completely different?
Yep.
What if I really love one genre and one set of tropes? How could I refresh those tropes? What could I do very differently? You'll see how much you can come up with. It's a lot.
Absolutely. And that, folks, is this episode.
Yeah. You got a lot to work with, ladies and gentlemen. I
And
hope you gleaned something from it.
Yep, we dressed this way just for you guys, so you have more
Right.
to talk about.
That's how long we've been together. What is this? Is this 416, 415?
I think it's
That's how many episodes
I
we've been
think this
together.
is
No wonder we're
414.
dressing the same.
414 or
something.
415. Yeah, it's for something.
I'll
Yes.
tell you what, bro. It's not 420, man.
No, far out. Yeah.
We should do all marijuana movies and marijuana stories for episode 420.
Well,
That
you
would be
already said you were out there trying to grow grass. You know, one of our
bro.
episodes. Yeah.
Yay.
Okay, everybody. Please,
Novella, man.
if you have any questions or comments, please leave them here in the comment section or send us an email at the address that you will find here in the comment section. And as Chris always says, I think at least 100 times at at every one of our episodes, Chris always says,
We've given you some information, and if you found it useful, then what we'd ask in return is if you can just hit the like, put a little comment in, that helps a lot, and share. There might be some other writer or some other filmmaker or some other poet who say, you know what, check this out. We were just talking about this other day. Now these geezers are talking about it. They say some good stuff. Do a share, because that helps us too.
yes. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone. Yes. Peace. Live long and prosper. All that good stuff. Take care.
Go tell your own damn story.
Yeah, for sure. Bye-bye, everybody.
Peace.